What happens when one of television's most outspoken hosts comes face to face with royalty gone rogue? In just 14 seconds, a single comment would expose the true character of a former duchess and lead to the most shocking ejection from a talk show stage in recent memory. This is the exclusive story of how Greg Gutfeld kicked Meghan Markle off his show after she showed her true colors in front of millions of viewers last night. The stage was set for what should have been a routine celebrity interview. Gutfeld, known for his sharp wit and no-nonsense approach, had agreed to host the former royal for what her team promised would be a discussion about her latest charitable endeavors. The studio audience was packed, cameras were rolling, and America was watching. But from the moment Meghan walked onto that set, something felt different. Her usual polished smile seemed forced, her movements stiff. Gutfeld, ever the professional, welcomed her with his trademark humor. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome someone who needs no introduction, though she usually gives herself one anyway," Gutfeld said with a grin as applause filled the studio. Meghan took her seat across from him, adjusting her designer outfit with deliberate precision. "Thank you for having me, Greg. Though I must say, that introduction was rather presumptuous." The audience chuckled nervously. This wasn't the warm, media-trained response they expected. Gutfeld raised an eyebrow but maintained his composure. "Presumptuous? I thought it was pretty tame considering some of the introductions you've written for yourself," he replied, keeping the tone light. "Excuse me?" Meghan's voice carried an edge that cut through the studio's friendly atmosphere. "I'm not sure what you're implying." Gutfeld leaned back in his chair, sensing the shift in energy. "I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying you've never been shy about self-promotion. It's actually kind of refreshing in Hollywood." But instead of laughing it off or playing along with the banter, Meghan's expression hardened. "I think you have me confused with someone else. Everything I do is for charity, for making the world better. Not everyone can understand that level of commitment." The studio fell silent. Even the cameramen exchanged glances. Gutfeld's smile faded as he realized this wasn't going to be the fun interview he'd planned. "Right, well, let's talk about your latest project then," he said, trying to steer the conversation back on track. "You've been working with several organizations recently." "I don't work with organizations, Greg. Organizations work with me. There's a difference when you bring the kind of global platform and influence that I bring to these causes." Gutfeld blinked slowly, processing what he'd just heard. The audience was completely quiet now, sensing the tension building between host and guest. "Okay, so tell us about these causes that are lucky enough to work with you," Gutfeld said, his voice taking on a slightly sharper edge. Meghan straightened in her chair, chin lifted. "Well, for starters, I don't think luck has anything to do with it. These organizations approach me because they recognize authentic leadership when they see it, something that's quite rare in today's media landscape." She looked directly at Gutfeld as she said this, making it clear she was taking a shot at him. The host's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his years of live television experience kept him steady. "Authentic leadership," he repeated slowly. "And what does that look like exactly?" "It looks like someone who doesn't need to tear others down to build themselves up. Someone who uses their platform responsibly instead of just making jokes about serious issues." The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. Gutfeld set down his index cards and looked directly at his guest. "Are you seriously lecturing me about using platforms responsibly? On my own show?" Meghan didn't back down. If anything, she seemed to gain confidence from his reaction. "I'm simply pointing out that some of us take our public roles more seriously than others, and some of us earned our public roles instead of marrying into them." Gutfeld shot back. The audience gasped audibly. It was the first real blow landed in what was quickly becoming a verbal boxing match. But instead of being knocked back, Meghan seemed to relish the confrontation. "How dare you," she said, her voice rising. "How dare you diminish my accomplishments, my advocacy, my work, by reducing it to who I married? I was successful long before I met Harry." Gutfeld wasn't backing down either. "Successful at what exactly? A cable show that got canceled and a few bit parts in movies nobody watched? I was building a brand, creating content that mattered, making a difference in people's lives." Meghan fired back. "But I wouldn't expect someone who makes a living mocking others to understand that." The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. Gutfeld's production team was frantically gesturing from the wings, but both host and guest were locked in verbal combat now. "You want to talk about making a difference?" Gutfeld said, leaning forward. "Let's talk about the staff members you allegedly made cry. Let's talk about the family relationships you've destroyed. Let's talk about the taxpayer money spent on your security while you badmouth the institution that gave you everything." Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. Those are lies spread by a racist media that couldn't handle a strong, independent woman of color joining their precious royal family. "Oh, here we go," Gutfeld muttered, shaking his head. "Yes, here we go," Meghan snapped. "Because every time someone criticizes me, it gets dismissed or blamed on my race or my nationality. But the truth is, I've accomplished more in my life than most people ever will, and I did it without inheriting a television show or a media empire." That last comment hit Gutfeld right where it hurt. His show wasn't inherited. It was earned through years of grinding in smaller markets and proving himself as a comedian and commentator. His face darkened as he processed the insult. "You know what, Meghan? You're absolutely right about one thing. You are different from other guests I've had on this show." She smiled, thinking she'd won some sort of victory. "Thank you for finally acknowledging that. Yeah, you're different because most of my guests have actual accomplishments to talk about instead of just complaining about how misunderstood they are." The smile vanished from Meghan's face instantly. "Excuse me? You heard me. I've had politicians, authors, comedians, business leaders, people who've actually built something with their lives. All you seem to have built is a career out of being perpetually offended." Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the studio floor. "I will not sit here and be insulted by someone who clearly has no understanding of the work I do or the challenges I've faced." Gutfeld remained seated, looking up at her with a mixture of disdain and amusement. "The challenges you've faced? You married into one of the wealthiest families in the world and you're complaining about challenges? You have no idea what you're talking about," Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. "The isolation, the attacks, the lack of support from people who were supposed to protect me." "Boo-hoo," Gutfeld replied flatly. "You lived in a palace, and people were mean to you on Twitter. Let me get my tiny violin." The audience was stunned into complete silence. This had gone far beyond typical talk show banter into something much more personal and ugly. Meghan pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Gutfeld. "You are exactly what's wrong with media today. You think being cruel is the same as being clever. You think tearing people down makes you some sort of truth teller. And you think being a victim makes you interesting?" Gutfeld replied, standing up to match her energy. "But here's the thing. Nobody forced you to come on this show. Nobody forced you to marry into the royal family. You made choices, and now you want sympathy for the consequences. I came on this show to talk about important issues, to use my platform for good. Instead, I'm being attacked by someone who's clearly intimidated by strong women." Gutfeld laughed out loud at that. "Intimidated? By you? Lady, I've interviewed actual strong women. Women who built companies, who fought wars, who changed laws. You're not strong, you're just loud." That comment seemed to break something inside Meghan. Her composed facade cracked completely. "How dare you question my strength?" Meghan hissed, her voice rising to a level that made the sound engineers wince. "You sit behind this desk every night making jokes about people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world. What have you ever done besides mock others?" Gutfeld's eyes narrowed. He'd dealt with difficult guests before, but never one who seemed so determined to insult not just him, but his entire life's work. "What have I done? I've entertained millions of people every night for years. I've given them something to laugh about in a world full of people like you telling them how terrible everything island." "Entertainment," Meghan scoffed, throwing her hands up dramatically. "That's your contribution to society? Making people laugh while the world burns? Better than making people miserable while living in luxury." Gutfeld shot back. "At least I'm honest about what I do." Meghan stepped closer to his desk, her voice dripping with condescension. "Honest? You call spreading negativity and cynicism honest? You call making fun of people who are trying to help others honest?" "I call it reality," Gutfeld replied, not backing down an inch. "And the reality is, most of the people you claim to be helping have never heard of you outside of tabloid headlines." The studio audience was frozen in their seats. Some had their phones out, recording this meltdown in real time. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of what was becoming the most dramatic talk show confrontation in television history. "You know what your problem is, Greg?" Meghan said, leaning over his desk now. "You're threatened by people who actually stand for something. You're so used to your little echo chamber of cynicism that when someone with real values shows up, you can't handle it." Gutfeld stood up again, matching her aggressive posture. "Real values? Is that what you call abandoning your family? Is that what you call taking millions of dollars from streaming companies to complain about how hard your life is?" "I didn't abandon anyone," Meghan snapped. "I removed myself from a toxic situation that was destroying my mental health. But someone like you could never understand that because you've never had to make a difficult choice in your life." "A difficult choice?" Gutfeld laughed bitterly. You had every privilege handed to you on a silver platter, and you threw it away because people criticized you. That's not a difficult choice. That's a tantrum. Meghan's face was flushed red now, her carefully applied makeup starting to show stress lines. You have absolutely no idea what I went through. The constant scrutiny, the lies in the press, the complete lack of support from the institution I married into. Welcome to public life, Gutfeld said flatly. Every celebrity, every politician, every public figure deals with criticism. The difference is, most of them don't burn down their entire family over it. I didn't burn anything down, Meghan shouted, causing several audience members to actually jump in their seats. I protected my family. I protected my children from growing up in that environment. You protected your bank account is what you did, Gutfeld fired back. You turned family drama into a Netflix special and a best-selling book. Very noble. That comment seemed to hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her mouth opened and closed several times as she struggled to find words. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking with rage. You are a disgusting human being. You sit here judging me when you don't know the first thing about sacrifice or service or putting others before yourself. Service? Gutfeld repeated incredulously. You served for what, 2 years? And spent most of that time complaining about it? I've got viewers who've served their communities for decades without asking for a documentary deal. Those people didn't have to give up their entire lives, their careers, their identities, Meghan protested. Neither did you, Gutfeld exploded. You chose to marry into the royal family. Nobody forced you. You knew what you were signing up for, and when it got difficult, you quit. I didn't quit. I evolved. I grew beyond what they wanted me to be. Gutfeld shook his head in amazement. You evolved? You abandoned your responsibilities and then spent the next 3 years trying to monetize your victim status. That's not evolution. That's exploitation. Meghan was visibly shaking now, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. You know what? I don't have to listen to this. I don't have to sit here and be attacked by someone who's never accomplished anything meaningful in his life. Then leave, Gutfeld said simply. Nobody's keeping you here. Maybe I will, Meghan shot back. Maybe I'll walk right out of here and let everyone see exactly what kind of host you really are. Be my guest, Gutfeld replied with a shrug. But before you go, let me ask you something. Do you actually believe the things you're saying? Or is this all just performance art? Meghan stared at him in shock. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Do you really think you're some sort of misunderstood hero? Or do you know deep down that you're just another celebrity who couldn't handle the pressure? The question seemed to break something fundamental in Meghan's composure. Her face contorted with fury as she leaned across his desk. You are pathetic, she snarled. You're a pathetic little man who gets his kicks from tearing down people who are better than him. I've accomplished more in 5 years than you'll accomplish in your entire lifetime. Gutfeld remained calm, which seemed to infuriate her even more. Really? What exactly have you accomplished? And don't say raising awareness, because that's not an accomplishment, that's just talking. I've raised millions of dollars for charity. I've brought attention to important causes. I've inspired people around the world. You've inspired them to what? Abandon their families when things get tough? Sue their relatives? Turn personal drama into public spectacle? Meghan slammed her hand down on his desk, causing his coffee mug to jump. That's enough. I will not stand here and be insulted by someone who contributes nothing but negativity to the world. Then don't stand here, Gutfeld said evenly. The door's right behind you. You know what? You're right. I'm leaving. But not because you're kicking me out. I'm leaving because I have better things to do than waste my time with someone so small-minded and bitter. She turned toward the exit, but Gutfeld wasn't done. Actually, Meghan, before you go, let me make something clear to everyone watching. She spun around, eyes blazing. What? You're not leaving because you have better things to do. You're not leaving because I'm small-minded. You're leaving because you can't handle being challenged. You're so used to friendly interviews and softball questions that when someone asks you to defend your actions, you fall apart. I'm not falling apart, Meghan insisted, though her voice was cracking. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you just spent the last 10 minutes having a complete meltdown because someone dared to question your narrative. This isn't a meltdown. This is me standing up to a bully, Gutfeld laughed. A bully? I'm sitting behind a desk asking you questions. You're the one screaming and throwing around insults. Meghan looked around the studio as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The audience was staring at her with a mixture of shock and embarrassment. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her breakdown. Her carefully crafted public image was crumbling in real time. This interview is over, she announced, trying to regain some dignity. Actually, Gutfeld said, standing up and adjusting his tie, It was over the moment you walked in here thinking you could lecture me on my own show. Security will show you out." Meghan's eyes went wide with disbelief. "You're having me escorted out?" "I'm having you escorted out," Gutfeld confirmed. "Because, unlike you, I actually respect my audience enough not to subject them to any more of this tantrum." Two security guards appeared from the wings, approaching Meghan with professional politeness but clear intention. "This is unbelievable," Meghan muttered as she gathered her purse. "This is exactly the kind of treatment that proves everything I've been saying." "No," Gutfeld said firmly. "This is what happens when someone comes on my show and acts like an entitled child. Actions have consequences, something you apparently never learned." As security escorted her toward the exit, Meghan turned back one final time. "You'll regret this, Greg. When people see how you treated me tonight, they'll see who you really are." Gutfeld smiled as he sat back down at his desk. "I'm counting on it. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this commercial break with someone who actually knows how to have a conversation." The camera stopped rolling as Meghan disappeared through the studio doors, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. The audience sat in stunned silence for a moment before erupting into scattered applause. Gutfeld straightened his papers and looked directly into the camera as it came back to life. "Well, folks, that was certainly educational. Sometimes the most revealing interviews are the ones where people reveal more than they intended to."